How much is spent managing service providers out there? We've done research in this area. We talk to 250,000 clients a year over the telephone or in person, on the road. We do surveys of end user organizations. We do surveys of vendor organizations. We have a consulting arm that helps people with their strategy for outsourcing or multi-sourcing. And we find, for the most part, that enterprises spend 3 to 10% of contract value on managing outsourcing relationships. We normalize that to how much of the IT budget that consumes. It's about 5 to 7%. And then, of course, 1.5 to 5%. And then, a typical enterprise in the audience right now, you're probably going to spend 5 to 7% of, the contract value managing an outsourcing deal. So if you're going to sign $1 billion deal, 5 to 7% of that is going to be devoted to managing the relationship, managing the outsourcers. And if you're multi-sourcing, it's going to cost more. It's going to cost considerably more. So figure on about 10% of the contract value being devoted to managing outsourcing. So $17 billion worldwide, that's a significant figure. How many providers do organizations use? We've done some surveys, and we provide them a list to end user organizations in North America and worldwide, Western Europe and Asia Pac, and we've asked them, select a category. Most of the survey respondents selected the 5 to 9 external services providers that are managed right now, about 22%. But if we look at just the averages for all respondents, in 2007 worldwide it was 9.1 providers is the average number managed. That's up quite a bit from 2005 where it was only 4.3%. So basically it doubled for North American providers, increased more for European and Asia Pacific providers. But if you look at North America being the mature region where things settle down to eventually, Europe and Asia Pac are going to probably settle down to that same range of North America of about 4.1 in 2005 up to 5.5 in 2007. It's quite a task to manage that many service providers, especially if they're outsourcers. There are some subtle differences between managing a large takeover type outsourcing deal, a traditional outsourcing deal, and a multi-sourcing deal. Basically, traditional outsourcing has been ad hoc, it's been tactical, it's been problem focused. In multi-sourcing, you have to become more strategic. It has to be studied, it has to be outcome focused, there has to be trust and control. Trust and control is probably the most important thing, because when you're dealing with a service, it's all about the experience and the perception and the expectations, and those are emotional issues. They have nothing to do with, for the most part, the specifications for work or the specifications for a product that's produced and how you use that in your business process. So, if you're a service provider in the room here, you can use this as a checklist to see how confident your prospects for outsourcing are. If they tend to be more outsourcing focused, then you might have problems in year 1, 2, or 3 of the relationship. If they have a lot of the disciplines of multi-sourcing, you're probably going to have a more value-based relationship than a cost-based tactical relationship. Look for these competencies as well if you're a service provider. If you're an end-user organization, these are the competencies you need to develop in order to be successful with managing multiple providers. And I think that many end-user organizations out there need help from service providers. Those sitting in the room now need to be able to provide consulting services to help end-user organizations with demand management and program management and relationship management especially. Help your clients get these competencies so that they will be successful with you and other service providers that they're dealing with. There are different qualifications and competencies for who's going to manage relationship management and outsourcing and multi-sourcing versus those folks that traditionally ran an IT organization or ran a sole-sourced IT organization. In the past, it was all about technical knowledge. And what we find is that you need more leadership knowledge and competencies and capabilities in a multi-source environment. So if you're looking to move into a multi-source environment, if you're an end-user organization, you need to take a hard look at those folks that now run your IT function and train them or supplement your staff with those skills that are needed, those charisma skills, those leadership skills that help people see the end of a major program and have a vision for how things will look in the end. Those things are very, very important. So for multi-sourcing roles and competencies, if we divide it up into 4 basic categories: service leadership, architecture, business enhancement, and provider management, for all of those categories of things you need to have to be successful, we look in the past, we've seen that many organizations have a mixture of 3 basic competencies. Either they're, service specific or technology specific, their knowledge of the industry or the business, or their behavioral competencies. Behavioral competencies tend not to be something you can train someone to get. It's charisma, likability, the ability to be followed and admired. And when you're moving into provider management, you're definitely going to need folks with those behavioral competencies. As you can see from the screen here, there's a different level of competency that's needed for all these 4 areas of where you need expertise. Multi-sourcing is a huge problem to begin with, but before an organization outsources, they typically have some sort of governance framework in place. Governance is different things to different people. Some people think governance is having meetings. Some people think that governance is, a flow chart, an organization chart. But for the most part, governance is setting expectations and responsibilities and decision rights within an organization and making sure all the stakeholders are involved so that decisions about outsourcing and IT in general have some sort of institutional knowledge. People remember why they outsourced. They remember why they moved to SAP. They remember why they went with a certain provider, this one or that one. So if you get governance right, if you're an end-user organization, the rest takes care of itself. That's another thing you have to develop and make sure that's appropriate in your organization. A lot of the time when you move to multi-sourcing, you're going to have to retrofit something. Governance doesn't change very, very quickly in many organizations, so you have to make sure you tailor the new multi-sourcing paradigm to your existing governance frameworks. And with governance, you're going to have meetings. You're going to have councils. These are folks that set direction. Committees, these are people that get things done. And then communities come and go, based on the priorities of the organization. Again, if you're a provider in this room, be aware that there are multiple stakeholders, even within the organization, that are talking about you and making decisions for the long term about how they're going to work with outsourcing providers, how they're going to change their sourcing strategy, and be aware that it's a very dynamic environment and it changes very, very quickly now for many organizations.